Donald Trump says he's ended 8 wars. 8. Since returning to office, he's made peace central to his political image. In August, he told reporters he had ended 6 wars. A week later, the number became 7. By October, during a visit to Malaysia, it was 8. 1 war a month, he said proudly.
If I can take time and save millions of lives, that's really a great thing. I can't think of anything better to do. But the 8 wars that my administration has ended in just 8 months, there's never been anything like that. Never. There never will be either. I can't think of any president that ever solved 1 war. I don't think anybody. They start wars, they don't solve them.
But has he really stopped wars or simply redefined what peace looks like in an age where conflicts rarely end? The first of Trump's peace deals came in May, when tensions erupted once again between India and Pakistan. A terror attack in Indian-occupied Kashmir brought the nuclear-armed neighbors to the brink of war. A ceasefire was then announced by the US president. Trump said the US mediated the talks after a long night of negotiations. Pakistan publicly thanked him and even nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize.
I would say that Pakistan had nominated President Donald Trump for Nobel Peace Prize for his outstanding, extraordinary contributions to first stop war between India and Pakistan and then achieve ceasefire along with his very wonderful team.
India, however, flatly denied any US involvement, insisting the agreement was strictly bilateral. The border remains calm, but whose diplomacy truly stopped the shooting depends on whom you ask. As May turned to June, Trump turned his attention to Africa, to the long-running dispute between Egypt and Ethiopia over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam on the Nile. Egypt argues the dam threatens its access to vital water. Ethiopia insists it's essential for its development. When talks collapsed in June, Trump tweeted, "If I were Egypt, I would want the water in the Nile." Days later, he claimed the US had kept peace between the two nations and even helped fund the dam, a claim Ethiopian officials called absurd.
With Ethiopia and Egypt and the dam, are they working out their deal? Because I had a deal done for them. And then unfortunately, Ethiopia broke the deal, which they should not have done. That was a big mistake. And we've stopped payment to them of a lot of aid because they did it. And they will never see that money unless they adhere to the agreement. But they built a dam which stops water from flowing into the Nile.
In reality, no new deal was signed, and water tensions remain unresolved. After a short but devastating war between Israel and Iran in June, the US bombed Iranian nuclear sites. Trump then declared a 12-day ceasefire and claimed credit for ending what he called the shortest war in Middle Eastern history. Israel praised his leadership. Iran's supreme leader dismissed it as propaganda. That same month, tensions flared in the Balkans between Serbia and Kosovo. When border skirmishes threatened to reignite a long-frozen conflict, Trump publicly warned both governments that the US would suspend trade unless they stood down. Kosovo's president said she had reliable information Trump's intervention prevented further fighting. The White House, meanwhile, pointed to an older 2020 economic deal signed during Trump's first term as evidence of his continuing success. Analysts, however, described this peace as symbolic rather than structural. By July, Trump's focus had shifted to Central Africa, the M23 conflict in eastern Congo. One of the region's deadliest had reignited earlier in the year. Rebels backed by Rwanda seized mineral-rich areas, displacing thousands. Trump invited both governments to Washington, where he announced what he called a breakthrough peace accord. But the M23 rebels, the actual fighters, were not even represented. Experts described it as a step in the right direction, but not the end of the war. Fighting resumed weeks later. Also in July, violence broke out along the century-old border between Thailand and Cambodia. Over 4 days, dozens were killed and hundreds of thousands displaced. Trump posted on Truth Social that he had personally called Thailand's acting prime minister to end the war, although Malaysia hosted the actual peace talks. But Trump used economic leverage, threatening to cancel US trade deals unless both sides agreed to a ceasefire. By 7th of August, an agreement was signed. Later in October, Trump flew to Kuala Lumpur to attend the ceasefire signing ceremony. August also saw Trump broker one of his most high-profile deals between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The two nations had been at war for decades over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. In 2023, Azerbaijan's offensive seized the enclave, displacing tens of thousands of ethnic Armenians. Then in August 2025, both leaders traveled to the White House to sign a peace agreement. They publicly thanked Trump and even nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Can I have a suggestion?
Yes.
So maybe we agree with Prime Minister Pashinyan to send a joint appeal to Nobel Committee to award President Trump with the Nobel Peace Prize because from the leaders of the countries which were at war for more than 3 decades, having this historic signature here, it really means a lot. This is tangible result of President Trump's leadership, and no one could have achieved that.
Experts called it one of his few genuine diplomatic achievements, though they noted Russia's retreat from the region made peace possible. Finally, in October, Trump unveiled his biggest peace claim yet, ending Israel's war on Gaza. With Israel's devastating 2-year bombardment that has killed more than 67,000 Palestinians, the world had grown numb to the violence. Trump's 20-point peace plan called for an immediate ceasefire, the release of Israeli hostages, and the freeing of Palestinian prisoners. When the final Israeli hostage was released and partial Israeli withdrawal began, Trump declared, "The skies are calm, the guns are silent, and the sun rises on a holy land at peace."
But the momentous breakthrough that we're here to celebrate tonight is more than the end of the war in Gaza. It's with God's help, it'll be the new beginning for an entire beautiful Middle East. In one sense, it's so horrible that it could have taken place, but in another sense, it's so beautiful to see a new and beautiful day is rising, and now the rebuilding begins. The rebuilding is maybe going to be the easiest part. I think we've done a lot of the hardest part, because the rest comes together. We all know how to rebuild, and we know how to build better than anybody in the world.
But Gaza lies in ruins, and the political questions about governance, disarmament, and sovereignty remain unanswered. Even his own advisors warned the truce may not last. Trump's claim to peace is rooted less in diplomacy and more in performance. His administration uses sanctions, social media posts, and high-profile meetings to project control even when conflicts are only temporarily frozen. This strategy is not new. In American politics, ending wars has always been as much about perception as policy. Eisenhower ended the Korean War only through an armistice, not a treaty. Nixon pulled out of Vietnam, declaring peace with honor even as Saigon fell. Obama ended the Iraq War only for ISIS to rise. Biden ended Afghanistan and watched the Taliban return to power. For a century, US leaders have oscillated between ending wars and reinventing them. Reagan ended the Cold War after years of proxy fighting. The Bushes launched massive invasions. Obama expanded drone warfare. Biden funded proxy wars in Gaza and Ukraine. And now, Trump's America fights less with soldiers and more with sanctions and deals. He's reduced the visibility of war, not its existence. This shift reflects a new kind of strategy where military power is replaced by economic pressure, cyber operations, and influence networks. So, has Donald Trump really stopped wars? He's certainly stopped some fighting. He's paused others, and he's turned the language of peace into a powerful political tool. But as history reminds us, from Korea to Kabul, American wars rarely end. They just evolve.